I feel like doing a redraft, so let's do a redraft. Today we're talking about the 2018 NHL Entry Draft. Now, for those of you who have been on the channel for a while, you know that this draft is oh so important to me. Not just because of the players that went, but because of what this draft symbolizes to me and my YouTube channel. 2017-2018 is really when I started making YouTube videos full-time as a hockey YouTuber, quote-unquote, and I say quote-unquote very loosely there. But my senior year of high school, 2018, this is when I really started honing in on hockey content, and it's really what propelled me towards consistently uploading hockey videos to the point where I'm here today at 17,000 subscribers, still trucking along 2 years later. So this draft is so important to me. I was always a big fan of the prospects of this draft. You know this because of the videos we made all the way back then talking about the prospects before they were even drafted. So today, let's have a fun look at the redraft scenario. What we're going to be doing here is taking a combination of two things. First off, we're taking a look at how good these players are today in the NHL, ignoring the draft projections and ignoring the standings. We're taking a look at how good these guys are today, as well as how good they can be in the future. Now, I will say, their success today is a lot more indicative of their ranking than the future. If I had to say, it would probably be like 75% of these rankings are based off of how good they are now, and 25% are based off of how they're going to be in the future. So, with all things considered, let's go on to our first overall pick in the redraft, and it's going to be Rasmus Dahlin to the Buffalo Sabres. You could debate two other guys to go in this spot here, but Rasmus Dahlin, to me, 44 points in 82 games in his rookie season, 40 points in 59 games in his second season on a bad Buffalo Sabres team. This guy is just so good offensively and defensively. Hands down, the most well-rounded and best defender of the entire draft thus far. He's a guy who may not get as many points as Quinn Hughes down the line, but his overall value to a team is unparalleled, and as a result, a number one left-handed defenseman who can be a franchise guy for years to come is going first overall to the Buffalo Sabres. Second overall to the Carolina Hurricanes, they select from the Barrie Colts. It is Andrei Svechnikov. Now, I know you can debate that Quinn Hughes has been so good to the point that he could go in this spot as well, but to me, after debating it for a little bit, because I know I made a video a few months ago talking about how Quinn Hughes could go second or first overall in the redraft, I started to think about what Andrei Svechnikov's ceiling is and how exactly this guy can project to go into the long-term future. And to me, the guy who is already a point per game now at 19 years of age, who will just get better and better as every year goes on. Svechnikov is a guy who I can legitimately see hitting 40 goals and 90 points year after year. And say what you want about Quinn Hughes, but to me, I think that's really valuable. And I know that there's definitely an argument to be made that Quinn Hughes could be as good, if not better, in terms of overall value than a Svechnikov, but I think just the ability that Svechnikov has, the ability to potentially be a number one winger in the entire league, I think that's super valuable. So he is going second overall in this redraft, just for the sake of splitting hairs. Third overall to the Montreal Canadiens, it's not Jesperi Kotkaniemi, it is Quinn Hughes. This is the guy who the Montreal Canadiens probably would have drafted instead, knowing now what they know about Nick Suzuki, knowing now what they know about their left-handed defenseman situation, knowing now what they know about just how good their center core is in general. Nick Suzuki already mentioned it, but he's a number one center on this team today. I won't say that Suzuki is a number one center on any NHL team, but for the Habs, he probably is. Danault is still there. He's doing really well. We know what he talked about when it came to his defensive deployment, but still, you take Quinn Hughes over Kotkaniemi in a redraft. I get that Kotkaniemi can still become a very, very good NHL center. Maybe even a number one, maybe even a 70, 80-point guy. But because we're putting a big emphasis on what these players have accomplished today in this redraft, Quinn Hughes is going third overall. Sorry, Vancouver, but Quinn is number 3. Fourth overall, we have the Ottawa Senators. They're taking Brady Tkachuk, a 45, 44-point guy in the NHL. It's kind of weird how identical his first 2 years in the NHL were at 19 and 20 years of age. But Brady Tkachuk is a power winger who can probably get better as the years go on. Playing for the Ottawa Senators, he has been a really good fit for them, and for me, nothing really changes here in the redraft. Tkachuk, to me, is the 4th best player amongst the entire 2018 NHL draft in terms of overall skill today, and going into the long term, you could debate that that standing remains constant. So, 5th overall, it is the Arizona Coyotes. They are going to be taking Jesperi Kotkaniemi. And yes, I know, we talked about how he wasn't as good to go 3rd overall, but he's still a pretty good player, and what we saw out of him in the playoffs against the Flyers was certainly a sight to behold. Kotkaniemi oddly works out here in this spot because the Arizona Coyotes needed a center, and what they got out of Barrett Hayton so far has not been as good as what Kotkaniemi has been able to bring to the Habs. He had a down year this past season, and he went to the AHL, but he was really good in the AHL, and he was really good in the playoffs too. So just by virtue of him performing well recently, and in the American League as well, I'm putting him here 5th overall because we know that he is capable of being a good player today, as well as into the long term. Going over to the 6th overall pick, it is the Detroit Red Wings, and they are selecting Filip Zadina. Nothing changes here from reality. And I know a lot of Red Wings fans will call me out saying, how could you put Kotkaniemi over Zadina? Haven't we been over this? But to me, it's somewhat splitting hairs, because when you come to the long-term potential, I think both Zadina and Kotkaniemi can be equally valuable to their teams, even though Zadina is a winger and Kotkaniemi is a center. And I know for today you could say, well, Zadina was better in the NHL than Kotkaniemi was. And I will not disagree with that. But I will say that Kotkaniemi was better in the AHL, first and foremost. I know the sample size is a little bit different, but hang with me here. But in the playoffs, to me, just seeing Kotkaniemi come alive and play the best that he has in his entire career against the Philadelphia Flyers in round 1, that to me is good enough to say that, yeah, I think today, just today, Kotkaniemi is a better player than Zadina. But obviously that's prone to changing. That can change as quickly as within the next few months. But just for the sake of splitting hairs and making a decision, we're putting Kotkaniemi at 5 and Zadina at 6. Over on to number 7, we have ourselves somebody who has not been mentioned all too much. It's Joel Farabee from the Philadelphia Flyers being drafted to the Vancouver Canucks. It's actually crazy how good Farabee was this past season. 21 points in 52 NHL games played. In the playoffs, he had 5 points in 12 games. He has been a very, very solid point producer. Back in the US NTDP in 2017-2018, he was overshadowed by Oliver Wahlstrom, who was drafted a little bit earlier to the New York Islanders, and at the time, I honestly thought that he would have been a top 7 guy, this Wahlstrom fella. I didn't really consider Farabee to be in the same tier, and in fact, I actually had Wahlstrom going to Vancouver in my mock draft. But everything we wanted out of a Wahlstrom, Farabee has exhibited earlier as well as a lot more too. So, for the ease of just taking things in as how they are, who's good today and who is going to be good later on, Farabee, man, this guy's been an absolute beast so far, which is why he is going 7th in this redraft after being taken 14th in the real draft. Next up, it's the 8th overall Chicago Blackhawks. They initially took Adam Boqvist. Today, they are taking Rasmus Sandin. And this is a different one. I get that. This guy was taken at the end of the first round by Toronto, but he has been a very, very solid contributor for the Leafs when he was in the lineup. With the Marlies, he had 15 points in 21 games. With the Leafs, 8 points in 28 games. In the World Juniors, this guy was an absolute monster. A better point producer on the back end than Adam Boqvist. And, of course, because we are taking a look at how they are today, Sandin is one of the only few remaining guys to actually have played significant NHL time, and because the long-term potential of him is also pretty good, I'm putting him here at 8th overall. Now for 9th overall, it is that same Adam Boqvist that we just talked about from the Chicago Blackhawks going over to the New York Rangers. He had 13 points in 41 games played in the NHL with Chicago and 0 points in 8 games in the playoffs. However, Boqvist has always been a really solid young NHL defenseman. Everything that Quinn Hughes had going for him at the 2018 draft, Boqvist to some extent also had that too. It's just the shot was a little bit better with Boqvist, the speed and tenacity was a little better with Boqvist, and for the most part, Hughes and Boqvist were labeled as kind of a neck-and-neck pair towards being the next generation of offensive potential defenders. Boqvist, though, has just had a much longer time developing into that role. Quinn Hughes kind of just snapped right into it. It didn't really take much time for him to transition into that at all. I have him below Sandin because Sandin has been better this year, and we are placing a bigger emphasis on how these players are today rather than the future. And going over onto number 10, the Edmonton Oilers initially took Evan Bouchard. Today they are taking Noah Dobson, the other right-handed defenseman, who was a big body who could move pucks up ice, that a lot of NHL fans were debating could go below or above Evan Bouchard. But Bouchard has been okay, but Dobson in the NHL this season had 7 points in 34 games. The fact that he has played, and the fact that he was somewhat in there, is very valuable in this evaluation. Now, he is still probably going to be a top 4 defenseman in the long term, maybe a top 2 depending on how he develops, but Dobson to me was always that guy who, even though I saw the value in him, really good skater, really good two-way ability, good offensive instincts, really good in his own zone, I personally just didn't like his projection compared to some of the other guys because, for me in my Vancouver Canucks, I wanted Oliver Wahlstrom, I wanted an offensive guy, I wanted Zadina if he dropped, I wanted Quinn Hughes if he dropped. I had Hughes 4th on my board, and Zadina 3rd overall. So when Quinn Hughes went, I was absolutely ecstatic. But we had rumors over and over before the draft that Vancouver wanted a right-hand D and they were looking at Noah Dobson. So I was like, okay, that's a good pick, but I would rather choose Hughes if he's there. So I guess now we're seeing the benefits to that mindset, but Noah Dobson still has a boatload of potential and is why we have him here 10th overall to the Edmonton Oilers. Imagine this kind of guy playing alongside a Connor McDavid. Oh man, that'd be cool. But obviously, since this draft is only 2 years old, I'm not going to say that this is the end-all and be-all. There are so many more stories to uncover with all these prospects, all 200-something guys that were taken in the 2018 draft. I know it's only been 2 years, which is why we've put a bigger emphasis on players and how they are today, rather than only thinking about the long term, because you could say that some of the guys in the 2nd or 3rd round could be as good, if not better, than some of these first-round guys, but they haven't had the space to prove that in the NHL yet, which is why we're going with the way we have. This is our 2018 redraft 2 years later. Talk to me in the comments what you think about this whole idea here. Do you agree with my picks? If you don't, who would you rather have instead? I hope you enjoyed this edition of the Trollus 99, and bye.